This is CFO IQ. Hi, I'm Andrew Zezas, host of CFO IQ, publisher of CFO Intelligence Magazine, and chief strategist and CEO at Real Estate Strategies Corporation. Here on CFO IQ, we talk with forward-thinking CFOs from exciting enterprise and middle market companies, as well as some highly accomplished subject matter experts. Our goal is to bring you experience-based intelligence and the insights of highly accomplished CFOs and others to help you acquire, understand, and use knowledge, make you a more successful CFO, and to increase your CFO IQ. Welcome to CFO IQ. We're glad you're here. Hi, this is Andrew Zezas for CFO IQ and Real Estate Strategies Corporation. Did you know that the properties that your company owns and occupies have multiple values? I'm not talking about opinions of value. I'm talking about actual multiple values on the very same day. So I'll give you an example. If you line up 3 different buyer types, a corporate occupant, an investor who wishes to be a landlord, an investor who wants to engage in a sale-leaseback transaction. Now assume that all 3 of those are sophisticated business people. Assume that they all have good advisors and they all have access to exactly the same information, not only about your property, but about market conditions. On the very same day, those 3 purchasers will have very different values for your property. Now here's why. The corporate occupant, their interest in buying your building is for you to move out. They'll make some renovations and they'll move in and conduct business in that building. So their time frame is usually shorter and they don't have some of the challenges with respect to time and risk that the other 2 purchasers have. So the occupant purchaser will typically pay the true market value, or I should say the greatest market value for your property in comparison to the other 2. Now, that buyer type will pay the higher price, so your response should be, why would I talk to anybody else? Why would I consider selling my property for anything less than the highest possible achievable price? Well, because the occupant buyer most often takes more time to find, and the negotiations can be more specific and can, in fact, take more time as well. So finding the occupant buyer is not easiest, but once you find them, they will typically pay the highest price. Now, compare that to the investor buyer who wants to buy your building and use it as a vehicle to rent to other tenants and generate revenue. So they want to be a landlord, or they are a landlord and wish to purchase your building for that purpose. That buyer has a whole other set of criteria. Their purchase of your building is the beginning. They'll also have to renovate it, but then they'll have to market it and promote it. And there'll be a period of time during which the building would likely be vacant as they lease it up to either one tenant or multiple tenants. And that in and of itself, whether it's a one tenant or a multiple tenant strategy, that'll have an effect on their time and their carry cost, because while the building's vacant, they'll have to pay for operating expenses and taxes and maintenance and repairs and insurance and utilities and all those things. And then once they do secure tenants, after they pay for marketing and promotional expenses as well, they'll have to pay commissions and legal fees, probably have to provide free rent, and likely a tenant improvement allowance. All those expenses are very significant, and they impact how that buyer, that future landlord buyer, would value your property. And in a balanced marketplace, that investor landlord buyer would likely pay 30% or more less than the occupant buyer. So why would you sell your building to an investor? Well, remember what I said about the occupant buyer. It tends to take longer to find an occupant buyer. Investors show up almost immediately. So if you have a timing issue and you want to sell your property quickly, it might make sense to take a discount and sell it to investors. If you're not in a rush, it might make sense to hold out and look for occupants. There's no wrong answer. The right answer is whichever one works best for you. But we're not done. Don't forget the sale-leaseback buyer. The sale-leaseback buyer doesn't want the building vacant. In fact, they want you to stay in it and they want you to lease it back for some period of time. Now, that may be a short time or a long time. But a sale-leaseback transaction isn't even a real estate transaction. It's a structured finance transaction, because the value of the transaction isn't determined based upon the value of the land or the value of the bricks and mortar associated with the building. The entire value of a sale-leaseback transaction is truly based on the cash flow that the investor buyer, the sale-leaseback buyer, will derive from the future tenancy. And not just the cash flow, but their impression of the creditworthiness and the risk profile of the seller/future tenant and their likelihood of paying all of the rent every month in full on time. And the value is derived based upon that stream of cash flow and the risk and creditworthiness profile associated with it. So that in and of itself is an entirely different valuation of your property than the occupant or landlord buyer. So I've just given you 3 today, and all of those valuations will be very different. They'll all happen on the same day. And I'm giving you this guidance on the assumption that you're talking to knowledgeable, well-advised, sophisticated buyers in each of those 3 categories. And on the very same day, they'll have very different values. And which one works best for you? And I've just given you 3 today. There are as many as 13 different ways to value your property on the very same day. So it's important for you to understand what your true objectives are for timing, for purchase, for sale price, for valuation, for risk, and a host of other things before you go to market. So make sure you're properly advised, make sure you understand what you're offering and what the likelihood of achieving your goals are before you take your property to market. If you have any questions, you can reach me at andrew.zezas@cfointel.com. This is Andy Zezas for CFO IQ, CFO Intelligence, and Real Estate Strategies Corporation. Look forward to seeing you again. This has been a production of CFO IQ. If you have topic suggestions, would like to be considered for an interview on CFO IQ, or if you'd like us to consider publishing your story in CFO Intelligence magazine, contact our host, Andrew Zezas, at andrew.zezas@cfointel.com. Thanks for joining us. Watch us wherever you watch your favorite podcasts, or visit us at cfoiq.com to view or listen to our next episode.